Welp, I just had my first character death, and it was from an ally wizard player character who could not help himself. He cast Fireball, knowing I was in melee range with the boss. I took exactly double my max health. The boss didn't even die. What does it look like from the boss's perspective?
Puny mortals, you will bow before me or die.
You may be large, fiend, but we will never
Surrender to your tyranny. You are quite brave to stand against me.
My stature may be small, but I will stand against you nonetheless.
Our battle will be...
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Are you okay down there?
Yeah. He's dead.
Did you just kill your own guy?
Sorry, my bad.
I was looking forward to that fight. Our battle would have been legendary.
It was only a few turns into a long and difficult combat. Short, sweet, to the point, because we've got a doozy of a story, guys. Buckle up, get ready, grab the popcorn, and let's dig in. There's no slide transition for this story, so, danger. Fuck. Hello, Crispy. This is a story I've been wanting to tell for a while, and surprisingly is on the tamer end of my tabletop role-playing game Pandora's Box stories. With those content warnings, what happened in your other stories? Did someone murder you? Are you a ghost? I've changed a lot since then. I used to be a very big doormat and people pleaser due to stereotypes of women in the tabletop role-playing game community, along with personal issues I was going through at the time. Whenever I think of this story, I want to grab my past self and scream at her to get out and not tolerate BS from people just because her friends wanted to play D&D. But hindsight's 2020 and patience has always been my virtue to a fault. This, in my eyes, is living proof that no D&D is better than bad D&D. Nevertheless, we shall begin with a cast. Myself as Rogue. I'm a pirate-type character with inspiration drawn from Pirates of the Caribbean, Our Flag Means Death, and Sypha Belnadis. One of these things is not like the other. The other two make sense. How does Sypha fit this character? I'm kind of curious. The DM is the problem. Sorcerer is a warlock sorcerer multiclass, longtime friend of mine for a year, but at the time, I had known him for about 4 months. Fighter was multi-class into Ranger with a very Trevor Belmont flavored build / character, which we bonded over a lot. Cleric, Succubus, I genuinely don't remember his class for the life of me, but mini problem, I guess. Dragonborn was a player in the DM's campaign and joined halfway, and finally, we have a Warforged. In April of 2023, I finally managed to escape an abusive relationship with a guy I had met through D&D. My mental health was in shambles due to him stalking and harassing me for the following year. I'm already a shy, soft-spoken person, but this was worse than ever due to outside factors. However, I met DM during one of his campaigns, which fell apart quickly, but that's a story for another day. DM had a player in that campaign, but was kicked out for various reasons, like spamming dice rolls, discussing his backstory despite being asked not to, and covering up my art with his own in every channel. Looking back, he was 100% antagonizing. My ex was easily provoked, and DM would routinely seek me out to give him sympathy when my ex would scold him, saying that he was autistic and couldn't help it. I am also autistic, and I've been primarily DMing for around a decade, and seen my fair share of social misunderstandings, so I empathized with his struggles and tried to mediate. But DM continued his behavior regardless. Otherwise, he seemed like a really wholesome guy, a bit goofy and socially unaware, but aren't we all? How naive I was. I also met Sorcerer through my ex's campaign, and we became close. Eventually, Dungeon Master convinced Sorcerer and 3 others to leave without me, causing all but one to block me. I then cut ties with my ex and managed to reconcile with the others through the one person who didn't block me. Sorcerer and I joined the DM's new game, while Dungeon Master joined a campaign I ran, which Sorcerer was also a part of. We discussed a potential romance between our characters, but decided to wait and see how things developed. I asked him not to set anything in stone, and he agreed. Character creation in DM's game seemed fine at first. We started level 5 with generous allowances like 2 rare items, 2 common items, a free feat, and stat bonuses. I built a swashbuckler pirate girl, a swashbuckler rogue with a dip into hexblade warlock, and I asked if I could trade all my bonuses for boots of haste, which the DM allowed without setting any restrictions. as I initially expected. Some of y'all are worse at balancing your game than the Helldivers 2 team. What the heck? As the game began, DM and I became close friends, playing games outside of sessions and getting to know each other better. Or so I thought. Things were good until a certain player, Succubus, joined up. Succubus, who played a shy and stoic succubus girl, seemed to dislike me from the start and avoid interacting with me at all costs. Anything I said was met with sarcastic, cruel remarks. Eventually, this player suddenly lashed out at me and Dungeon Master for chatting too much on the server, targeting me specifically with insults in a message where he pinged everybody. The DM spoke to him privately, and Succubus revealed that my suspicions were correct. He didn't like people. Yeah!
You monster! I despise everything you stand for. You are a foul creature, and I will dedicate my entire life to hating and despising you! Sorry, I didn't really get what you were talking about. So like, you don't like me? What am I talking about? Were you listening to a word I just said? I mean, I was paying attention, but like, I just really wanted to make sure oh my god! I can't, okay, I'm kind of messy!
It wasn't because of anything I did, but it was because I was a woman, and he had past trauma with all women? I guess he decided to take it out on me, due to me being the only girl at the table. Sorcerer tried to defend Succubus's actions, but ended up admitting that their behavior was not okay. After being confronted by the DM, he left the game. This was far from a good start. During the second session, we took a job monitoring an undead protest. On the way, my rogue stole some trinkets from a store, rolling incredibly high and yoinking 4 little items. A tiny sword, a snow globe, a piece of paper, and a ring, one of which turned out to be magical. I was confused because when I stole all the items, I specified small, unmagical, unimportant trinkets, but I shrugged it off thinking it wouldn't come up again. The one magical item we learned about was a ring that only a ranger could attune to, so I gave it to our fighter. Okay, and we went on our way. We continued to a wizard tower near the protest site, where I snuck in and found a bag of gold from the wizard, made to bribe us for not protecting the protesters. This fell flat, causing my character to nab the gold anyway and share it with the party. I never made any attempts to hide it, and due to the small amount of things I had collected, we made my rogue the party bag of holding person until we could afford an actual bag of holding. When we started speaking to the people at the protest, I could tell Cleric was having a bit of a hard time. We weren't previously told this was a fight for the undead's human rights, replicating behavior from protests against racism, in a very insensitive way, might I add. And oh my god, I hate this crap so much. I see so many YouTube shorts like, I want D&D to cover racism. I want it to be included as a topic in every game. And like, look, if you want it in your game, cool. But frankly, if I join a D&D game where there's a civil rights plot that's handled with the grace of a CW show, I will leave immediately. If you're gonna do it right. Because if you do it wrong, it's real bad. During the protest, NPCs started referring to our cleric as if they were a raging racist, despite them not saying anything. We had combat from people attacking the protesters, and I was rolling exceptionally well until I went down with our cleric. Nobody else took healing spells, so we wiggled on the floor for a while. Our fighter, however, was damned by RNGesus that entire session, which we all seemed to laugh about and just move on from. But after the session, Cleric dropped out, upset by the inclusion of themes of racism which he had asked the DM to avoid. The DM handled it horribly, which I'll include a screenshot of because it was bizarre. How much of this cringe am I going to be able to get through? Let's see. Having an oppressed group in the D&D world does not automatically mean I need to correlate to be compared to real-life oppression or racism. Your woke brain just makes it impossible to see past anything. It's not offensive about directly comparing it to presenting it in such a way that's representing an actual group of oppressed people. Some people in the world just don't like to be zombies and don't want to be a woke moment like that, so it's what's the problem? Who's offended by this? I wish I had a better Ben Shapiro impression. This led to Cleric's departure, followed by Warforged. DM lied about the reasons for them leaving, but we were vaguely contacted by Cleric and told about the situation, excluding all the insults he had told them, which we only knew after cutting him off. We were more confused by it because me and Warforged were both people of color who noted we were also not comfortable with this portrayal of fantasy racism. We confronted him after the Cleric's message, and he apologized and promised not to do it again. DM then later asked me to change my character build because our fighter wasn't doing enough damage. When I questioned this, DM became defensive and threatened to take away my boots of haste without giving me any of the bonuses the other party members had, so pretty much transforming me into just a base level character. I said I didn't think it was fair because fighter also had custom bonuses like a homebrew whip. He just wasn't rolling well during that session while I was. He got angry and lashed out at me, saying my character didn't fit the campaign at all and wouldn't receive any backstory elements or character focus because of it. Bro, making threats as a DM is crazy.
No, wait. Godfather, let me explain.
You should never have come back to this city, foolish boy. Now, you're gonna learn the consequences of your defiance.
No, please show mercy.
You didn't mean disrespect, but you committed it nonetheless. That means you're either lying or you're stupid. I can't tolerate either one. You leave me no choice. I'm going to kill.
Please, leave my family alone.
Your Dungeons and Dragons character.
Wait, what?
You'll never see her again.
No,
She's
dude,
gonna die
dude, I
a
don't
terrible
really- I
death
don't care.
in your next session. She's gonna what?
Dude, I don't care.
You don't care about your D&D game? I mean, I do care about my D&D game, but like, I don't care about it more than my life. In the grand scheme of things, I can always play in other games. It's just a character in our imagination. I'll just keep her in here and use her somewhere else. I mean, honestly, if that's your only threat, I think I'm just gonna go.
That's not fair.
Later.
Someone stop that guy. What? Darn it.
I was upset because I had specifically made sure a pirate character would work in his campaign, and he confirmed it would work. He also claimed Fighter was angry at me because of it. The Fighter had been nothing but sweet and comforting. So I went with him about this and asked if I had done anything wrong in his eyes. Fighter was immediately confused. We both realized the DM was lying, and he admitted to misinterpreting things and having favoritism towards Fighter, that he was autistic and couldn't help it. Each problem throughout the story was met with, and I quote, "I'm just a dummy autistic white boy, sorry." Along with a condescending baby voice he would only do to me. DM continued to sideline my character. Each time I spoke to an NPC, they were either cruel or ignoring me entirely. It got to the point where I barely spoke during sessions, since each new job and plot hook was met with, "Your character would know nothing about this. You also can't learn about it." Everybody had gotten a little bit of backstory except for me, and each time I tried to interact, I was completely shut down. My roleplay scenes were cut short, he would skip over my combat turns, and anything the party got, items, roleplay, info, etc., I was always somehow given dramatically less. The three current players, Sorcerer Fighter and myself, discussed what to do about this, and I politely asked him if there was any way he could include something for me to do so he wouldn't just soft lock me, and he agreed, albeit stubbornly, and said he didn't notice I was made a background character because of his autism. What was to come, however, was the biggest "shut up and take it, at least I'm giving you something" I've ever seen. Behind the scenes, DM was just as problematic in my game, if not worse. He played an overly optimistic, happy-go-lucky bat boy warlock druid with his wildfire sprite serving as both his patron and best friend. From the start, his character made everyone extremely uncomfortable. He would hug and touch other characters without prompting, and even called one character Mama and her brother Uncle in a baby voice due to a joke about adopting his character. My campaign revolves around themes of plague and death caused by various evil, setting the context for a task where they need to remove crystallized necrotic energy for a corpse for specific testing. The sorcerer suggested carving it off to avoid infection by physical contact, but Dungeon Master decided to turn into a beaver and chew it off with his mouth.
I found something magical. I'm going to eat it.
Despite my repeated warnings, he insisted and ended up getting infected after failing several checks. He sulked for the rest of the session and later accused me of targeting him. I explained I had warned him multiple times, but he continued to blame me until I finally agreed to remove the infection the next session. He was a challenge to work with when it came to his backstory. Despite my efforts to incorporate his character into my horror, grimdark world, he complained about not receiving as much backstory attention as the others, despite his backstory being maybe 4 sentences total. I'd asked for any more to work with, and he gave me just nothing, so I assumed that was it. He also attempted to say his patron/wildfire spirit was a god without consulting me. Any ideas I had to tie it into pre-existing plot points, he hated because my character is too sweet. I don't want him to go through anything sad.
I'm looking for a good, wholesome movie to just uplift my spirits and make me feel so much better. Perfect.
I was scared of my players feeling unimportant in my eyes, so I included a few scenes just for him that didn't include any sad or dark elements. We had to say a temporary goodbye to one of my players at the time, needing a hiatus for life reasons, and we had an entire scene for her, where we wrote it up together in a ritual for her and her NPC girlfriend to suddenly vanish in an ill-prepared ritual site, which was the player's idea. It was emotional, everyone was heartbroken, but she loved it. In the next session, Dungeon Master started by saying that he and Sorcerer had been the ones who disappeared. We were all confused, and it turned out DM was just straight up not listening, nor was he in any of the character events that weren't his own, and just assumed that he was part of this one. I felt upset, especially after including him so much, and nicely told him as such. He pouted for the rest of that session, and after, he changed his character. Apparently because I had forced his hand somehow. One of the primary examples he used was a combat where his character failed to talk to two weeping Trents out of attacking because another party member began to destroy their forest and other Trents. He claimed I was also targeting him with this, but not letting him immediately talk them down, no check required because of his status as a druid. And at this point, I was exhausted, so I told him to sit on his decision and get back to me in the morning. Surprise, surprise, he didn't change his character. He just wanted sympathy points and began to get more aggressive with me the morning after due to me not fully giving in to him, claiming I didn't care about him enough and that I was being cruel. He questioned the other players, and nobody saw an issue with the combat or scene that I ran. Fighter joined the campaign midway through with a rough around the edges human rogue healer. DM's character immediately began hugging and touching Fighter's character, making Fighter feel uncomfortable and upset. After Fighter's character told him off, DM sulked again, huffing and making audible humph sounds whenever I spoke to him. This behavior was a reoccurring issue. DM would invade other scenes and act like an intrusive, forced positivity style therapist to player characters and NPCs, becoming upset when they reacted negatively. He often excused his behavior by saying he was just a little ooh femboy, which was unsettling. We later learned this was because of a blatant kink display of his slave play dynamic, his character being the master's patron. Bro! Oh my god. There was a Tavern tip earlier in the video of me being like, wow, this warlock patron dynamic is unique and great. But they just went and ruined it. Now you made me look like an idiot. Ugh, this habit of interrupting scenes and inserting himself where he wasn't invited forced me to mute him multiple times. Each time he was called out, he would whine and claim that his autism made it hard for him to understand social cues. Fighter as well tried speaking to him about it. Once again, he promised to change and couldn't live up to it. Since I get easily overstimulated, his tantrums became just more overwhelming. To manage this, I asked him to take a break and calm down whenever he got upset. He also had the habit of calling me slurs targeted towards Mexican people and claimed they were just funny words. Ugh. The only reason he wasn't removed was because the other players usually didn't seem to mind, and I assumed I was just overreacting, which I later learned was untrue. Everybody found him disruptive and obnoxious. They just didn't tell me at the time. Tell your DMs things like this, please. Flashing back to his game, aside from the numerous issues, nothing major happened until my character started shrinking every session, eventually becoming 2 feet tall, which we learned was because of a curse put on the tiny trinket sword I stole in session 1. Hey, Vex. Yeah? I know we're in like session 100 and something of this campaign, but remember that rock you picked up in Craghammer at the beginning? I think... Yeah, it instantly disintegrates your character. Dude, what? Isn't that such a great twist? Like, I think that's a master play of... Yeah, this was stupid, but we went along with it, trying to look for a cure. We traveled to a new area hoping to lift this dumb curse, and encountered one of the DM's old player characters, a Warforged king who had liberated his people from slavery. To my surprise, he was automatically furious with my character. He accused her of intentionally bringing her personal big bad evil guy, who arrived with a ghost ship threatening war on the town. I had no idea about this plot development, and I'm as confused as everyone else. In the same session, an NPC from my backstory appeared, my character's goblin boatswain, a grumpy, unsavory old man who was like a grandfather to her. However, his personality was completely different. He now behaved exactly like DM's character in my game. Perplexed, I asked DM about it after the session. He openly admitted to changing my backstory and the personalities of my character's crew because he didn't like how I had written them. He thought his version was just better. I nicely asked him if he would keep in mind my writing for the NPC, and he agreed, turning the NPC into a foul-mouthed a-hole who just told everybody to go screw themselves, and absolutely just nothing else. It was all said and done like a Pokemon just repeating his name. He behaved like a pouty child who didn't get his way, but I was beyond jaded and stayed silent due to not wanting to seem needy. Our Dragonborn has severe attendance issue, by the way, but because he was DM's second favorite, DM began a mini campaign instead of continuing the current one, so the Dragonborn wouldn't miss anything. This was a superhero academy themed game using mutants and masterminds, which was challenging to grasp and creating character sheets for, and the DM offered no assistance whatsoever. I came up with a mind control psychic that was like an anti-hero with traditionally villain powers he used for good. The Dungeon Master began a one-sided keyboard war when I sent him my concept, where he accused me of disregarding consent and What? Whoa! Dude, like half the X-Men are telepaths. Like, what is wrong with you? This was all despite knowing that this is a sensitive topic for me, and that Sorcerer and Fighter would hate me if I used it. Shocked, I sought support from Sorcerer and Fighter, who had no problem with the concept. Eventually, DM relented, but insisted I weaken my character, ironically ensuring they were less powerful than Fighter's concepts, comparing them to Fighter's character relentlessly. I begged him to stop being so aggressive with me, and he said that he was only mean to me because he loved me and cared about what I thought of him. I love you so much. This is a mature way to express affection. It's only looking back that I see how manipulative he was. This main campaign lasted 2 sessions where he would creepily call each character his good boy, only to drop the whole thing because he was too lazy to learn a system he suggested. This happened with a separate one-shot he ran where I played a Dionysus-inspired trickster rogue. The DM proceeded to rant and rave the whole time about being attracted to my character and how dominant and sexy he was. My timbers were shivered indeed. Back to the main campaign. I will speed round the bullet points for this because they're just ridiculous. We continued preparing for war, despite it being my story. I had nothing to do with it. The narrative framed DM's old player character, the King of the Warforged, as the hero who was going to save everyone once again. Meanwhile, NPCs shamed and belittled my character, only referring to her to comment on her attractiveness. Fighter became the commander of a group of soldiers. Fighter had a 2-hour tour of the entire kingdom, while the rest of us just had to sit and watch. No scene cuts, no nothing, just Fighter tour time. He was very visibly uncomfortable with it all. Fighter and Sorcerer had a 2-hour shopping episode during which they were finding new designs. I had to sit and do nothing because the Dungeon Master would not let me participate, claiming I could do stuff afterwards, and then not letting me do stuff afterwards. The shopkeeper in this episode was an invisible man. Fighter and I made jokes by him, like saying, "I'm sure he's making himself clear." This caused the NPC to go off character specifically and curse her, even though Fighter was the one making the jokes. Fighter and I agreed to do a romance between our player characters, and I consulted Sorcerer as well to make sure it was something he would be fine with. He was pissed because apparently he had romantic feelings for me, both in-game and out-of-game. I asked him not to pursue these feelings, but he went against my wishes and continued to try and pressure me into a relationship. This led to a massive falling out where he lashed out at me, claiming he felt entitled to dating me because we were close friends, and that he hated me for not being with him, that I was a temptation god put in front of him and then cruelly taken away. Eventually we worked it out. He remains a good friend to this day after addressing his previous incel-like behavior. However, things worsened again when he played out a scene where he gave my character to Fighter as if she were like an object. The best reward. Gore. Fighter and I were both rightfully pissed, but we managed to turn it into a sweet scene despite the DM's interference. The DM then interrupted, asking me to give a random dice at the end of the scene, claiming my character had somehow obtained another curse. Fighter and I were befuddled, and the campaign started to feel like a constant cycle of us looking at each other and mouthing, "What the heck?" with each new development. Around this time, the DM began... Oh my god. You have the worst luck with men. Y'all watch Lucifer? You know Ella Lopez? Like, she has horrible luck with men, just constantly with men that suck. This writer is Ella Lopez. I'm just imagining her the whole time. Yep, the DM just began harassing me, using defending from the big bad sorcerer as his cover. He would defend me from my ex's very outward harassment, despite me begging him to just ignore it, expecting me to grovel at his feet for white knighting me. He treated me like a child who couldn't defend themselves. He started to act as if I were his girlfriend, saying that from the moment he met me, he planned to make me his girlfriend. Planned, along with sending me sexually charged messages and voice notes asking me to send him lewd images and call him master and owner. This sounds unbelievable, but like, this video exists.
Whenever we're by ourselves, wherever we're alone, at home, or in private, you must call me Master at all times.
Just saying. He would obsess about how I was the only woman who spoke to him, wonder why, and that I must be his soulmate. He told his family about me for some reason. I had to tell him firmly that I was not interested in dating anyone at the time, and wanted to just be friends, expressing I was not comfortable with his advances and possessiveness. He reacted angrily, trying to debate with me, and saying that I did actually want to date him. I just didn't know it yet. That he was only possessive because he was the only one who truly loved me, and we were meant to be together. He even tried to tell Fighter to badmouth me for not dating him, but Fighter knew what was going on and shut that down immediately. DM only seemed to back off when confronted by another man about his actions. Otherwise, he would sulk constantly. He never took me seriously and played off concerns as overly emotional woman while being very easy to stop emotionally as well, which is my favorite thing about misogynists. Some of the most sensitive people. If I replied to someone's messages before his, he would lose it and claim I hated him. He would whine and spam me with messages, sending voice notes crying when I didn't reply quick enough, claiming I hated him and didn't love him. He became very needy and codependent, getting jealous and angry every time I would speak to Sorcerer or Fighter, along with going off on me one time because I didn't compliment his art enough, while he shamed me for taking commissions because all art should be free, and if you acquire money, you're being greedy. Alright, that's the greatest crime! Prepare the execution squad! Every day was a constant battle of him accusing me of targeting him and not loving him anymore, along with trauma dumping his past onto me unprompted to try and guilt me into saying yes to dating him. This included peer pressuring me in front of Sorcerer and Fighter, knowing I cared how they felt about me. We fought my character's big bad evil guy, who was also her patron, at the 6th level. He got countless details wrong, and at a certain point admitted he didn't read my backstory despite it not being very long whatsoever. Her big bad evil guy was suddenly a woman who acted like they didn't know her whatsoever, again, despite her big bad evil guy being her patron and the one who created her to begin with. A comic book supervillain who was not intimidating. Rather, she was just pulled straight from r/I'm 14 this is deep. It was a chaotic battle, and once again, the Dungeon Master's old player character took all the glory. Somehow, he had a mechanical false Hydra hidden away. I'm already not the biggest fan of the false Hydra. Making it a wannabe Mecha Godzilla pet doesn't make it any better. In fact, it makes me want to that feels better. Yeah, he had a pet mechanical false Hydra hidden away, causing devastation in other areas. The party was furious and confronted this Warforged king after the combat. We all had to make 3 wisdom saves, and despite rolling high numbers, we all failed. Our memories of the incident were erased, and instead we were magically compelled to love him and be grateful to him for saving us with a power word kill. The Dungeon Master screamed it into the microphone, causing it to cut out, so only a perfectly cut off static could be heard over the microphone. He asked us afterward if we thought the power word kill moment was cool, and we all had to bite our tongue. Please, don't bite your tongue. Just tell your DM. Sorcerer lit a man and his shop stall on fire for very little reason. This will be relevant. We went to another general store after traveling to the edge of town due to Sorcerer's backstory stuff coming up. Sadly, the plot revolved 100% around him, which was fine in theory, but I was being pushed further into the background, especially in an arc that was supposed to be mine, according to the Dungeon Master. I stole 7 tiny potion bottles, which the DM specified were small, didn't look expensive, and were non-magical. Fire distracted the shopkeep, while Sorcerer stole some goods as well. I pocketed them with a nat 20, and bought a new rapier with some gold, due to not wanting to steal anything truly important. It was against my character's moral code, and the DM knew this. However, the DM refused to tell me what it did, despite the fact that I bought it, so we decided to gamble on it. Dragonborn had the spell Identify, and despite us using it on all the items I stole, the DM always threw a tantrum when he had to tell us the magical properties of items and would say stuff like, "It's surely magical." Okay, seriously, could you imagine this crap in any loot-based game? How unbelievably annoying this would be. Wow, after a long, hard-fought quest, I finally got this brand new piece of gear. Oh, pity, I have no idea what the hell it does! Eventually, we learned about the items I stole, which were called cantrips. These small potion bottles required a DC 17 Wisdom saving throw. If successful, you earned a new cantrip at random, but if you failed, it resulted in a -3 to your highest stat with no chance of recovery whatsoever. It gives me True Strike, or it gives me Death. We said hell no, and decided to maybe sell them later on. The Dungeon Master got visibly mad and upset, trying to urge us to use them and pouting when we refused. We went to another general store later in a different town, and I was banned from it. Not my party, just me. Confused, I asked why. The second store I stole from was part of a chain. Despite the others' involvement, only I was banned, even though I was invisible, with a cloak of elvenkind, and had rolled a nat 20 against the shopkeep's low perception check. He somehow just knew it was specifically me. After the session, we asked the Dungeon Master about it. He was nice about it in front of the others, but privately went off on me again, accusing me of hoarding magic items, avoiding consequences, and being greedy. He spoke down to me as if I were a child with an actions have consequences spiel that further irritated me. He claimed he only gave me the bag of gold in earlier sessions to see how greedy I would be with it. I defended myself, explaining that I had split up the gold immediately and always shared the magic items I stole with the party. No one wanted them because they were homebrew and not mechanically useful to them, so I tried to find random uses for them. One of them even cursed me just because I stole it. I pointed out that Sorcerer had stolen multiple times, set a stall on fire, and even killed a man in broad daylight without any repercussions. Yet I was the only one being punished. More yelling and cursing ensued, leading me to separate myself from the conversation. Like clockwork, apologies flooded in, DM defending himself, saying it was because of his autism, and that he would remove the ban. This change of heart only came after he spoke to Fighter, who backed me up, saying it wasn't fair that I was the one that kept being punished. I admitted I went a little cold, and told DM that I was not going to keep putting up with his antics. He used neurodivergence as an excuse for his bad behavior 100% of the time, and would act pathetic and apologize despite making no efforts to improve his behavior. He responded just better to the men than me, as he always has. I asked him not to keep me around because I was the only woman who paid him any mind, and just to tell me to leave if it was going to be an issue. I was tired of his aggression, and it seemed like in every conversation, he would look for a fight to pick and anger to take out on me. Guilt trip ensued, along with voice messages of him crying and apologizing, saying he loved me more than anything in the world, and would change, that if I loved him, I couldn't be upset with him. That's awful.
So, in summary, my love, you have corrupted your soul with the artifact of a demon. You have murdered countless people and burned down their homes. You have generally been a complete douche to everyone you've ever met.
My love, what are you saying?
I'm saying that after everything you've done,
I still love you.
Yeah, I knew it. Now let's make love.
Dang it!
I don't think I even replied. I just went to sleep. After the ban was lifted, our journey continued, leading us to encounter a scarecrow curse healer who revealed that I had been afflicted with 4 curses. Surprised and confused, I couldn't recall acquiring them, and DM couldn't remember the specifics either. Fighter and I questioned why I seemed to be the only one targeted by curses in a world where they were supposedly common. DM had no words. The session ended abruptly, and our next session was the last and relatively uneventful thing, aside from Sorcerer and Fighter's futile attempts to cure a werewolf of his lycanthropy curse, draining our gold reserves in the process. We stopped talking as much after this, and admittedly, I enjoyed the silence. Then out of nowhere, he sent a paragraph filled with insults, claiming I was never satisfied with anything he did, and that he was at his wit's end with me. I stayed in the campaign only for Fighter and Sorcerer. They wanted to continue playing with the 3 of us together. I didn't want to disrupt that. I attempted a heart-to-heart conversation with him multiple times, offering feedback when asked, only for him to later weaponize it against me. My mental state was at an all-time low, cautiously walking on eggshells in a hobby that used to be my only source of relaxation. Fed up, I informed the others that I was leaving and kicked DM out of my campaign. They both cut ties as well. The DM frantically messaged anybody he could, begging us to forgive him, that he was autistic, that he couldn't help it, along with making burner accounts with names like, "I wish you had truly loved me." I finally opened up about the harassment that I endured throughout the campaign to my friends, and truly wish I had done it sooner. But there is an inherent fear of opening up with things like that, especially in a male-dominated community. He went full nice guy afterwards, calling me an attention-seeking, tramp. We'll go with tramp. I tuned everything he said out and just blocked on all his spare accounts. We got in contact with Cleric again, who told us the full story of what happened between them, and needless to say, we were horrified and very regretful we kept this dude around. I'm glad to say this does have a happy ending. My campaign's still going a year and a half strong. Me and Sorcerer have repaired our friendship, and we are coming up on the first anniversary of me and Fighter in around a month. He has helped me heal tremendously, offering a shoulder to cry on without ulterior motives like the Dungeon Master and Sorcerer had, but genuinely because he cared about me like a normal human being. I don't know where I would be without him. I learned a lot from this, and while I wish I learned it in a far less traumatizing way, I'm just glad that I know now. Congratulations. Wow, that was long. A doozy, and a fun one. I commentated throughout the story, but the biggest thing here for me isn't the incel stuff, because we talk about that all the time. The biggest thing is the mental health stuff. I'm glad that in the current year of 2024, we're a lot more aware of mental health as an important element of our lives, and we talk about them a lot. However, there's a weaponization to mental health that also is relevant. Now, of course, this weaponization should not be an excuse to ignore people's mental health problems, okay? It's a balance, but it is at the same time important to acknowledge how people weaponize mental health language to manipulate others, like this guy using neurodivergence or therapy talk to get this woman to be some sort of partner for him. I've even seen alpha male podcasts recommending tactics exactly like this. In fact, I'm 99% sure that's where this guy got it from. I've been on the receiving end of this behavior. It sucks. It's actually my greatest fear whenever I bring up mental health stuff at a table. I'll be honest about whether or not I'm having an episode of anxiety, but I always feel like I'm manipulating my friends or my colleagues in some way, even though that's not strictly true. As long as you're approaching the situation in good faith, it's okay to be honest. But using that honesty as a way to try to get something out of a person, that's where the manipulation comes in. And that is what this guy was doing. Hey, that's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed this crazy long episode of RPG Horror Stories, you might enjoy our last RPG Horror Story marathon. There's a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 stuff going on. It's linked in the cards and at the end. But before you go, please do leave a like on this one to let me know you enjoyed it. And subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment White Knight to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, then that's like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.